Am I sharing or no?
No.
No.
I'm sharing now, I guess. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this is our chapter 3 here. So what goes into a working process? So who was asking this, Maury or?
Yes.
So you clearly know what goes into working process: direct materials, direct labor, and overhead. And we have 3 different products. So now you might have to go through. Let me maybe look at a different slide. You might have to go through kind of backward, So here you have working process, right? Direct materials, direct labor, and overhead applied. So now you might have some additional information here in this problem. Maybe you have cost of goods manufactured, okay? Maybe you have cost of goods manufactured.
Yeah.
So you have some number here. Let's say you said 10, for example, here in the working process. You have some number 10, and you're told that direct materials are 2, for example. And then you have direct labor and overhead applied. So you know that 8 is over there. 8 is over there, right? Maybe you have to, again, figure out, well, this is just 10 now. I don't know what it is. Again, if you're asking questions from the homework or something, but I don't know what this 10 represents, beginning, a balance, or something that you just added now, or so you might have to look at cost of goods manufactured, for example, and see, well, so if this 10 is just the beginning, how much you had to add, and then cost of goods manufactured, and what's the ending inventory, or cost of goods manufactured, and then ending inventory, how much came in. So I'm not sure about that part. Then direct labor, you might have to, yes, go ahead.
In this instance, it would be the ending balance, that 10 that he was referring to. And then having the $2 in direct materials in it.
In the ending balance.
Yes. Yeah.
And what's the question?
So pretty much like you said, so yeah, let's say you have $10 ending balance of work in process with $2 in direct materials. How would you go about, I guess, distribute or kind of breaking that down? Yeah, I actually am stuck on that question as well. So.
Well, I mean, you must be given some additional information. You cannot just guess.
Yeah, the beginning.
Just guess what 8 is about in the how much it belongs to direct labor or how much it belongs to applied overhead, right? You cannot just guess. So this is also what I say. Sometimes you cannot be guessing, right? You don't need to overthink things, but you cannot be guessing, and you cannot assume anything, right? So so you might have to look at what was the beginning balance, what was added. You might, well, if you have cost of goods manufactured, again, can help you figure out if you have cost of goods manufactured, and ending inventory. What else do you have then?
We have beginning also.
Beginning and?
Yeah. And we have total manufacturer cost also. I think we have all those information based on like the previous question. We have all those information found in like cost of goods manufactured. We have a beginning working process and total good manufactured and ending manufacturing working process. We have all those information.
Okay. Well, again, it's hard for me to talk specifically about. Maybe we can. Okay, let's look at one of the problems instead from chapter 3, exercises. So maybe that will help us better than just this slide here. So because things will have to add up, right? Things will have to add up. Okay, so here, beginning work in process inventory, as you can see, work in process inventory. Here we have cost of goods manufactured. This is going to finished goods. Here we have ending inventory. These two things add up to these two things, beginning inventory and total manufacturing cost. Somebody was saying just this a second ago. I cannot see all names this way, but so these two things are equal to these two things, right? So you must have something. So if you have 10 here, and then if you have cost of goods manufactured, let's say of 40, then these two things here will add up to 50, right? So now, if out of these 10, $2 are whatever materials you said, how do you know how much labor you put in and how much applied overhead you put in? There are different ways to go about this, right? I mean, multiple ways. We are kind of just talking in abstract here, again, because I don't have the problem in front of me. But you might have to find direct labor. Maybe direct labor is based also on some ratio with direct materials or something. Maybe you have to figure out, well, how much labor was here at the beginning, how much you added here, and then what will be the number that came out here. Or maybe there's some, again, per unit of something, right? Per unit of machine hours or labor hours or whatever. So you figure it out that way. But then applied overhead, you might have to figure out again through some POHR. And so there are a number of different ways to figure out now here what is here, let's say these 8, or in what ratio that are applied. You clearly cannot assume it. But you have to always try to use this, all information that is available to you. Now, this is easier said than done, of course, because you have to you have to simply know your stuff. So, so again, you might be helped by, maybe you need this total here, something like that. Okay, so the answer to this is really just staying flexible, right, with the problem, and not relying completely on kind of same problem looking. I mean, all problems looking the same. Let me go to exercises, and somebody's talking over there. Behind. Let me go to exercises in chapter 3. What are my exercises here? I don't see my exercises. Okay, so let's look at chapter 3 exercises. We covered it last time. So manufacturing applied to working process. So homework problems are good. They make you think in new ways, in other ways, not just straightforward. Okay, let's look at for example this problem here. Well, you see here working process, right? You see here working process. So now you're given ending inventory here of 5, correct? I mean, how do we know how much of this is direct labor? How much is direct materials? How much is applied overhead, right? Well, for example, with raw materials, we know that the beginning was 7. So in this beginning working process, 10. Well, let's see first this way. 7, and then we have ending of 15. So, and we purchased what? 118. So that was 7, and we added 118 minus 15. So 110K was materials that we used, right? Here. I mean, we have to be given enough information, not like, again, we will be guessing, right? So these 270 now have 110 of direct materials. We have it here, 270. Okay. We need another variable here to figure out, well, then at least the third one. What is direct labor? What is applied overhead? So you can see, again, you have to go sometimes backward. Let's say you don't have these 270. Well, you know that your cost of goods manufactured is 275. 275 plus 5 is 280. And if your beginning was 10, then these costs have to be 270. You get the idea? Kind of backward, going backward. I mean, not really backward, but kind of from a different direction, not just straight from beginning inventory and then ending up with ending inventory. Okay, so now we have 110 here. Okay, so we need to have some other information about either direct labor or applied overhead. So we get the pieces here. So we would need to know now here in these 5, again, we cannot just guess how much in these 5 is direct materials, because we don't know how much direct materials were in these 10. It says inventories, but we don't know in this working process here 10 how much was raw materials or direct materials in this case, because it's all direct. We don't know. We would need to know how much direct materials is here. We are looking for direct materials. How much direct materials is here? Then we know that direct materials here is 110, right? We would need to know how much direct materials is in cost of goods manufactured to find out how much direct materials is in ending inventory. So again, use all information going kind of from different directions, not just straight forward, just in one direction. Sometimes you even have to go from finished goods, right? From finished goods to find what cost of goods manufactured are. Then once you find what cost of goods manufactured are, then you go further backward. So you're going basically backward. Okay, it's hard, again, it's hard to discuss this specific problem, and I don't have any specific problem here that looks similar. So, but that's the idea. That's the idea. It's a good exercise anyway. Okay, anybody else? Let's go to chapter 4, okay, because I see that let's go to chapter 4. Anybody has any other questions before chapter 4? Chapter 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, I have one question. How do you get sales? Because when I was doing the homework, they didn't give me the sales for the income statement. So I was wondering, how do you get the sales?
Okay, try a little bit more specific. What was the format of the question, or of the income statement, I should say?
They didn't give us an income statement. They just told us to make the income statement and stuff like that. So I was
But in what format? In what format?
Give me a second, Professor. I'm gonna look it up right now.
I think in that question we knew like gross margin, like we should go backward to go to a sell. That's how, because we know income, we know like net income, we know net income, and we know like the expenses, net operating income, we know also that one. So it's just hard to go backward to go up to sell.
Okay, very good. Very good. That was Maury, right? Excellent. Well, who was asking this question? So, for example, you have it here. You have that very nicely, I think, explained the difference between different formats and how to get exactly to, again, same thing as what we just discussed about this question in chapter 3. I mean, look at who was asking this? Who asked this question just a second ago? So I know. Huh?
Jason.
Jason?
Yes, Professor.
Okay, Jason. So, so you see this slide here. It explains really well the difference between two different formats, comparison between them. But also similar to, as I just said in chapter 3, the person who asked the question about homework. I mean, we will work a lot on this on chapter 6, or you will work a lot on chapter 6 in those slides, in narrated lectures. I will spend a lot of time pointing things out. And well, over there, I will say, repeat, but it will be mainly, of course, related to variable income statement, or contribution format, I should say. But I mean, the same thing applies also to traditional format. So both formats are very good in terms of solving problems, because once you're comfortable with them. So if you're asking now, for example, how do I find my sales? Well, look, sales can be here. This is a traditional format, right? And I think Maury was saying now that you have gross margin. And so you were probably dealing with traditional format, okay? Now you might have had to transfer this to contribution format, I don't know. But in any case, now you have selling expenses here. Well, again, you cannot guess. You cannot just guess, what are my selling expenses? Well, you have $20,000 here, okay? I think I have a very good exercise on this in chapter, I believe chapter 1, where you have to figure out when kind of there are question marks and you don't know, it feels like you don't know now, or maybe it was a homework. You don't know which way to go, but you have other information in that problem, either exercise or homework. So again, you cannot guess. So for example, you're given here sales and administration is 20. Well, how do I know how much is one or the other? Well, you would have to be given some information, right? Either you have to be given admin expenses fixed or variable. Now, you might be also told sales, I think that's in my exercise, sales expenses are, fixed this much. Yeah, but there's also a variable portion. So you have to figure this out. It's based on something. Now, for this total here, for example, 20. Again, we will work on this much more in chapter 6. And so that's the flexibility and knowing things. I mean, you cannot just be kind of completely reliant. Just, I need all of this information, sales, then cost of goods sold, gross margin. That's kind of too neat, right? But if you are going, as Maury is saying, let's say from the bottom up, you have net income here, 10,000. And then you have gross margin of 30, then you have these 20 here. Now, how much of these 20 again is selling and how much is admin? You also have to be given information, so you cannot be guessing. So for example, in this example that I'm giving now, see, you can find selling expenses, selling and admin expenses, because we don't know how much is selling, how much is admin here. But you can find them without knowing sales, without knowing cost of goods sold, right? As long as you have these two items. Now, with the contribution format, and I explained this in narrated lectures, selling expenses can be here, and selling expenses can also be here. Why? Because they can be variable, they can be fixed. So again, different ways of looking at things. Here in the traditional format, we know that all selling expenses are below gross margin, because gross margin includes only cost of goods sold, right? Selling and admin expenses are below margin here. But with the contribution format, not all sales and admin expenses are here below contribution margin, only those that are fixed, but those that are variable are here. So we might actually have to look into both places and then add them up. The bottom line is, if you did this, again, I think I have that exercise in narrated exercise, and it explains, I think, well, specifically something like this. Then if you find that your selling expenses are here 20, I mean, not 20 because the total is 20. Let's say your selling expenses here are 10 and admin expenses are 10. Well, then those 10 selling expenses would have to be here also, the same 10, just they might be 7 here in variable expenses and 3 in fixed expense, right? It doesn't matter. It's just there's 7 variable and 3 fixed, but the total selling would still end up being 10, right? So that might be helpful just in how do I find selling expenses. Now, yeah, in the problem, they might be kind of packaged or wrapped in different ways, right? So a portion of it might be given to you as fixed, and then a portion might be given to you as variable, or a portion might be just say, well, it's a portion you might have to find by deducting gross margin from net operating income, and then you have another piece saying here admin expense are 10. Well, then you end up with selling expenses 10, right? Jason, is this helpful or?
Yes, it was helpful.
Okay.
Professor.
Yeah, so flexibility. So this is why I emphasize flexibility always, not just relying on, I'm going to just pound this problem and repeat this problem, because problems will not always be the same. The concept is the same. And again, especially maybe for this exam, I expect questions to be a little bit kind of more straightforward. So really knowing fundamentals should be kind of really important. But fundamentals are then important for more complicated questions or not. It's just you have to do additional step, like you're doing in homework. Or sometimes I jump straight in narrated exercise. I say I deleted part 1 and 2 and go straight to 3. Why? Because that's how questions are, for example, on the exam. But flexibility is important, because if you just say, I'm going to just do this problem, I'm going to just memorize this problem, and then other problems just look different, but it's the same thing. It's the same idea, same concept. They just look different. Maybe even just the format is presented to you in a different way. And then you're kind of lost. So that's not a good thing. My goal is for you to do well, not for you to not do well. So so flexibility again, looking at the problem from different directions, right? Okay, you want to go to chapter 4?
I have one more question, chapter 3.
Okay.
It was one of homework also question, like we were asked like to maybe a journal entry of like a sale, a job, like for example, a job cost us, let's say $100 to make, and we sold it at, let's say, 120, and they want us to make the journal entry of that activity. Then
well, yeah. Well, those are journal entries. Those are journal entries. Again, you go through the textbook what the journal entries are. That's mainly, as I said, financial accounting. We are not focusing too much on journal entries here. If you want another tip, probably journal entries will not be important on the exam, for example, but you need to know them just in case. So again, because that's not a core of this class. But just go to the textbook. I don't spend too much time. That's why in my lectures on journal entries. But go to the textbook and see what the journal entry is. Whatever revenue you accrued, right? Whatever cost of goods sold, you have to register for this sale. What else is there? I mean, nothing else is there. You're selling something. Another point about this, actually, what you're now saying is, and the previous question is, there are differences between manufacturing and merchandising firms, right? So you have to keep that in mind. So, for example, don't get confused if you're looking for cost of goods sold. Now, I have to have direct materials and direct labor and applied overhead, whatever. If it's a merchandising firm, there's no direct labor, there's no direct materials, there's no applied overhead, because you're not manufacturing anything, you're just buying and selling. So your cost of goods sold adjust your merchandise, but you still have the same traditional format, right? If that's what you asked for, you still have same traditional format. You have your sales, and then you have cost of goods sold, your merchandise, right? And then sales administration also, again, separately below the gross margin. But then, in a sense, so where it's easy kind of to make a mistake, or not make a mistake, but forget, or because you just don't realize, well, cost of goods sold are just variable costs, just variable. right? How much you buy, that's how much you, and sell, that's how much you cost you will have. And then in the contribution margin format on the other side, all of those costs will be in the same spot, right? Plus maybe some selling and administrative costs in a variable place above contribution margin. You with me? Jason especially, are you with me?
Yes, Professor.
Yeah, so then those merchandise will be equal, basically equal to those costs of goods sold will be equal to variable cost. So if you're looking at the traditional format, merchandising firm, your cost of goods sold will be equal to variable cost of those costs of goods sold. Not total variable cost again, because you might have some sales and admin variable cost to add to this. But the bottom line, they will be equal. Now, on the other hand, if you have manufacturing firm, we know that they will not be equal. Why? Because some of the cost of goods sold from the traditional format, above the gross margin, cost of goods sold, product cost basically, some of them will be variable, some of them will be fixed. So they will be split up and down, right? So go through that slide again in narrated lectures, chapter 1. So I talk about this over there. So I don't know about the journal entry again. So look at the journal entries, and we don't want to talk too much about homework. I don't have it in front of me, and it's not that homework you still do, by the way. So okay, so okay, let's go to chapter 4. Let's go to chapter 4. Just kind of make main points here, and if you have any questions, I want you to. Chanel, what questions do you have about chapter 4? Tell me. You're right in front of me here, so that's why I'm calling you.
I would like to go over the exercises.
Happy birthday! Yes, happy birthday. I'm joining you too. Just mute your microphone, please. So, okay. Chanel, what would you like to do?
Just the exercises, just to refresh the base costing.
Exercise in chapter 4?
Yes, the exercises, please.
Okay, let's go to exercise. Okay, whoever is on, please mute your phone or your computer microphone. Okay, that's a good idea. Let's just go through the exercise because lecture is lecture, right? Okay, so what do we have here? So for example, we have our basic, I think here, exercise. So what are we looking for here, Chanel?
We're looking for the unit product cost of each product according to the ABC system.
Okay, very good. And so if we are looking for product cost, what do we always need anyway?
Direct material, direct labor, overhead.
Okay, very good, Maury. Which overhead? Applied, actual, which overhead?
Applied.
Applied, excellent. In chapter 4 in AC costing, we usually don't need to worry about applied, or it's kind of assumed. Either you're told in the question, applied overhead is assumed to be equal to estimated overhead or actual overhead, whatever. So there are no adjustments or things, and we are focusing mainly usually on units, not on total, so there are no adjustments to make at the end. And of course, we know that applied overhead is not the same as estimated overhead. But for example, in this question here, you can see here estimated overhead costs. Well, we will take this as applied overhead cost, right? So we will, I mean, equal. So we will kind of use this to find our POHR, and then we will use these estimates to divide into the total, and then find our POHR, and then multiply it by activity. So so we don't need to worry about that part in this case. So direct materials, direct labor, and overhead. So now, but what are we focusing mainly on in this chapter 4, Chanel?
I haven't really studied it yet. I'm still on chapter 3, but I wanted to look at the exercises so that I can get an idea of what's in the chapter.
Okay, that's not good. I mean, that's good, but not good in a sense that, again, you need to kind of speed up a little bit. Rodica, what are we focusing mainly on in chapter 4? No?
Professor, I haven't a chance to study chapter 4. I'm in chapter 3 right now.
Okay. Who did anyone cover chapter 4 actually?
Is it activity cost? Chapter 4 talk about CMR, right?
Chapter 4 talks about what? Okay, chapter 4 is focusing mainly on overhead again. So we are still working with overhead mainly. But why I'm asking this, what are we focusing on in chapter 4, is because when you have a question that says, what is the unit product cost? Then you do not forget direct materials and direct labor, right? Because you might spend 5 minutes on figuring this out, and you get correct answer here. You do your job. You know, everybody gets worked up about ABC because so many different activities, and everybody, you know, wants to kind of master this, which is great. But then, and then you get, for example, this here number of 14.4, and then you get 2.52 for posts.
How'd they get the overhead?
Well, we will go over this now. But so you get these numbers, let's say, correct, but then you forget to add direct materials and direct labor if the question is unit product cost, right? So now when you have a multiple choice questions, then it helps you, unless one of the answers is 14.4 and 252, and then you say correct, and then you move on because you did everything right. Right? But you forgot to add here direct materials and direct labor. So you should be mindful of that again. So practicing is helpful, and always remembering, that's what I say, you know, go through the kind of procedure, through the steps that you got used to when you were practicing, meaning what goes into product cost, what goes to product cost, direct labor, direct materials, and overhead. Now, if the question is just what's the overhead per unit for these units, then it's 14.4 and 252, right? So now how do we get to this overhead, you will need to go through narrated lectures very carefully, and I go really step by step, kind of with very, very basic ideas, continue with our chapter 2 and 3, and then we kind of move a little bit further into this ABC costing, which is uses the same idea that we covered already in chapter 2. So let's look at this problem. So we have we need to determine unit product cost for these two products, rims and posts, we said, right? And we are given here direct labor hours per unit, annual production, rims 0.4 hours and post 0.2 hours, and 80,000 units and 220,000 units. Okay. So now, what do we want to do here? With this, we are also given these activity cost pools. That's the whole point of activity-based costing, chapter 4. We are also given these activity measures, and we are given estimated overhead costs for these 3 measures, right? Now, let me ask you a question. What's the total overhead cost here? What's the total overhead cost? Well, the total overhead cost is here, right? These 3 together. There's the total overhead cost. So if the question is, compare the cost between activity-based costing and regular costing, traditional costing, or plant-wide costing, which we covered in chapter 2. Well, then, what's the POHR for traditional costing? What's the POHR for traditional costing? Sean, what's the POHR for traditional costing?
16.
How do you find it? I'm sorry?
Is it 16?
Okay, Joseph Liu. Joseph, how would you find POHR for traditional costing in this example? Okay, Nicole. Nicole, go ahead.
Yes, can it be total estimated of manufacturer overhead over total estimated amount of allocation?
Excellent, Nicole. Excellent, excellent. Give yourself an extra point. So you would add up these 3, right? You would add up these 3. You would get some number here. Let's say that this number is here, what? 288 plus 200 is
489, 600.
100?
No, it's 489,
Okay.
600.
Let's say 490,000. Let's say 490,000. So you would have to realize, well, what's my total overhead? You're not given here total overhead, but you know that your total overhead is all overhead here, right? Total estimated overhead. It just is broken down into 3 different pieces, 3 different activities. Now you would divide these 490 into, as Nicole is saying, allocation base. And what's the allocation base? Well, you would have to be given what's the, you would have to be told what's the allocation base. Now, in this case here, would the number of setups be a good allocation base? Probably not. It's too small a number, right? Probably it's not. It will be either be machine hours or direct labor hours. But would you pick machine hours, for example, here as your allocation base? Why yes and why no? Would you pick machine hours as your allocation base? Anybody? Nicole, would you pick?
I don't think so. I think I would have picked
I would say
probably, I don't know. I'm not sure, but I think I would have probably take direct labor hours
But
because
why you wouldn't pick machine hours? Or why
um
you pick direct labor hours?
I'm not sure.
Because there's more labor hours after the machine hours are over. Like there's half as many machine hours as labor.
Half as many machine hours. What do you mean by half? It's like 5 times more, 6 times more, not half. But
Oh, whoops! I didn't look at the total. Sorry, I was only looking at rims. But yeah, there's much more labor going into that than just on the machine.
Okay.
okay. And what's the who is this? Tristan?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, Tristan. And why would this be? That's not the you know, perfect answer, but we are getting somewhere with this. We can go along with this line of thinking. So why do you think that that would be relevant? That direct labor hours, there are so many more of direct labor hours than machine hours. So that would be better way to use as allocation base.
I think because the allocation base should be based on the total work or as close to the total work as you can get.
I'm not sure what you're saying there, but okay, let me kind of just move on. So, well, first of all, you are right in the sense that we said that in chapter 2 that we would use allocation based something that is very close to what is causing our costs, right? What is causing our costs? Now, are these number of setups causing our costs really a lot? Well, first of all, look at the breakdown between this estimated overhead. In those $490,000 or $500,000 that we said the total is, how much is what's the percentage? I mean, how much of this belongs to these setups? Well, $21,000. So that's not really a lot, right? It's like less than 5%. So this is causing the cost of the overhead clearly much more than machine setups, and also much more than machine hours. And yes, clearly we're using a lot of direct labor hours. So this activity is very important to us, to our production. We cannot discount this activity. We cannot do the production without this activity setups. But this activity is clearly the core of our kind of manufacturing process. This is where most things happen, 24,000 labor hours, many more than in machine hours. Okay. But this is not the main reason why you would pick. It might be the main reason why you would pick. But what's the other reason that you actually not cannot, but should not and cannot pick machine hours here as allocation base for the total overhead and POHR? Well, you didn't cover chapter 4 yet, clearly. So, but we are getting there. We are covering it now. So what would be the reason?
Is it because it's not used for posts at all?
Excellent. Well, very good. That's the key here. I mean, because think about this. If we divide, let's make it $500,000, 500K total, right? Let's make it easier to calculate. So we have $500,000 in total overhead. And we are using traditional method, right? Traditional method. So we will say what? We will divide this by allocation base. What is our allocation base now here if we use machine hours? What is our allocation base?
4,000.
4,000 total, right? We have to use total allocation base. So it will be 4,000. So 4,000, 500K divided by 4,000 is what? $200, right? No, not 200.
125.
100. Yeah.
125. Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I'm saying 200. 125. 125. $125, right? This is now our POAHR. $125 per what? Per machine hour, right? This is chapter 2. Now, Tristan, now we want to apply this POAHR to our products, right? So if we apply this POAHR 125 to our products, what will happen?
It would be under applied, I guess, because we're only applying to rim machine hours.
No, that's overthinking it. That's good, but that's overthinking it. So that's what I'm saying. Just focus on information in front of you. So you're kind of step ahead already. I'm asking about applied overhead. Applied overhead. You're already a step, like 3 steps ahead. You're already in adjusting things and what is actually, you don't even know what actual overhead is here. So, but think about just applying overhead. What do you need to do to apply overhead? You need to multiply your what? POHR of 125 by what?
And the actual hours?
By actual hours. And what are the actual hours here? 4,000, right? 4,000. We say we assume that these are the estimated equal actual and everything. So 4,000 hours, but who is using all 4,000 hours? Only rims, which means you would do what? 125 times 4,000, you would get what? You would go back to 500,000, and these 500,000 in cost would go to which product?
Rims. The rims.
Rims. So the rims would take all $500,000 in overhead cost. Does that seem right to you? Does that make sense?
No, we overstated the cost for rims.
Correct. Very good. Very good. I like that. I was worried you're going to go somewhere else with this. We overstated, but correct. Very good. We overstated cost for rims, not overstated cost in general. Cost 500,000 in this case for overhead, just for overhead, not labor or materials. But the problem is that we would apply these 500,000 in full, 100% to rims. But look, posts are using a lot of other activities. They're using machine setups, and they're actually using double the amount of labor than general factory. Than rims in general factory. So posts are not free, right? Because if you applied it by machine hours, it would appear that posts are free. What would you have here then in this overhead? You would have nothing. You would have zero. You understand this? You would have zero because you applied nothing to the post, because you applied everything to the rims. And these 252 would transfer in full to these 14.4. So now the rims would be what? 16.92, right? The total. So the rims would then be 69.2 in overhead. And that would be, as somebody said, overcosting rims. But Posts are not free. They weren't zero. They used some activities, some resources. So this is a good example. This is actually a mini summary of the whole chapter. Of course, you have to go through the lectures and how I developed this step by step from very simple, what we did in chapter 2, and then step and another step to get to here. But the procedure is the same. I mean, you can see already that we are dealing with, well, we didn't show it yet, but we will be dealing with the same procedure, meaning we will look at this here, total cost for this specific activity, and we will divide it into this total, okay? And then we will get this rate here, you see, rate, 120 per setup. So we will have here 120 per setup. Then we will do the same here for special processing. We will divide this total here into these 4,000. We will get $45 per machine hour. But of course, now we already know that these 180,000 will be fully applied to rims. Why? Because rims are using all machine hours, okay? And then for general factory, we have direct labor here of 288. We will divide them into this total here, and we'll get this rate of 12. So instead of one rate, as we just calculated a second ago, of let's say whatever it is, depending on what we use as allocation base, we will have 3 POA jars. 1, 2, 3. 3 POA jars. Okay, so what do we do now with these POA jars? Well, now it depends what we are asked for. Let's say we are asked for rims. Okay, let's say we asked for rims. How much will rims cost us per unit? Okay, well, here down on the bottom, we are dealing with overhead. So we will say $120 per setup, right? How many setups will rims use? Well, 100 setups, 120 times 100. This is applied, right? Applied, 120 times 100. Then 45 times 4,000. 45 times 4,000. And you can see here, 180,000 is in full here, 180,000. Why? Because rims are using all machine hours that we're using, 100%. So they will get 100% of the cost, but they will not get 21,000 here in. They will just get a portion, right, of these setups. And then for labor or general factory, we will say $12 times 8,000 direct labor hours. So rims will get 96,000 out of these 288. And you can see that posts will get double the amount, right? Because they're using double the amount of machine hours or labor hours. So they will get 192. These two, you see, will add up to these 288, right? Same like all of these together would add up to these three together here. Let's say it's 500. I don't know how much it is, but let's say it's 500 just. So they will add up to the same total. So you can always check your work, right? So now finally, yeah, I mean, you can do this in a couple of different things. Sometimes I work with just per unit. I think that the easiest and the best way, because sometimes it gets messy with decimals and things if you're working per unit. I just like to work per unit because that's me. But I think it's better to work this way through total, for example. So you add up these total costs, 12,180.96. So you end up with 288 here, which is the same number as this here, but that's just a coincidence. Those are not two same numbers, right? So you end up with 288, and then you will divide these into how many units did they make of these rims? Well, they made 20,000 units. They made 20,000 units. So you divide them and you get 14.4, and that's your number here, 14.4, right? And then to this 14.4, you just add direct materials, which it says here it's 17. And now how much is direct labor? You're not told specifically, but you're told it's using 0.4 hours, and the labor wage rate is $16. So you would just multiply 16 by 0.4, that would give you $6.4 per unit in direct labor. And then you add them up all together, and this is your cost, total cost per unit, product cost. If the question is what's your overhead per unit, then you have finished here with 14.4, right? You see, if you multiply 0.4 by 20,000 units, what do you get? 8,000 hours. 8,000 hours. And if you multiply 0.2 by 80,000 units, what do you get? That's what? 16? 16,000 hours, direct labor hours. And those are exactly the numbers you have here. 8,000 here and 16,000 here, right? So you can see how, again, you're looking at different pieces of information to figure out when something is, let's say, missing. You can find it from other places, right? So maybe this is not given to you, but it's here, right? So you clearly have direct labor hours. Same thing if this is not given, let's say just this column is not given. Well, of course, you would add up. Give me a second just to admit these people. Yeah. You would add up 8 and 16, right? Because you need this total of 24, no matter what, to figure out this predetermined overhead rate here of 12. Even if it's ABC or if it's traditional. Because now the question might be again, give me the comparison. What's the difference between cost, let's say just overhead cost, or total cost for rims under ABC and under traditional? Well, direct materials and direct labor will stay the same. So that's always the same in both cases. But overhead would change, right? This amount, this number here would be different. If we do it through ABC here, this way, or if we do it, let's say, through traditional. So now we would divide this, let's say it's, for example, it's 500,000. We would divide by 24,000 here. We would get some POHR, and then we would multiply that POHR by 8,000, right? And then we would get a different number than here, 96,000. And then we would divide into 20,000 units, same unit. But again, if you need to get to this 24,000, you can get it through here. It says 8 plus 16 is 24. Or you can say here, which wouldn't be necessary here because you have these two numbers. But in case you don't have them, you have to be able to say, well, if the simple question is just what's the POHR? What's the traditional POHR here? And you're given all of this information, but the question is very, very, let's say, simple and basic. It's not even about ABC or anything. You're given all of this information on the left side. So you're given all of this information on the left side. But the question has nothing to do with ABC. The question is, what's the POHR under traditional method or plant-wide overhead method, right? And you're told, well, your allocation base is direct labor hours. Your allocation is based direct labor hours. And this piece of information is missing here. Well, you go here, right? You go here, and you would get these same numbers, total of 24. And then you have here total, the total, you just divide 24 into this here total. And that's your POHR, and that's the answer to your question, right? That's the answer to your question. And then you might compare it, let's say, to here under, to compare it with 14.4 in ABC over here. Yes, Nicole?
So they're always gonna give us like before, like I think it was on chapter 2 like that, they're gonna give us like the they're gonna give us the amount of allocation, I mean the allocation, like they're gonna say like our allocation base is
Yes,
direct labor hours.
yes, yeah.
So
Well,
okay,
otherwise you cannot, yeah,
I
that's
mean
what I mean
an
by,
example.
yeah. Otherwise you cannot be guessing, right? You cannot be
Exactly,
guessing.
that was
So there is no like, well, no. Now, sometimes the allocation base, I think it's actually, maybe even in your homework or somewhere, like sometimes you're given allocation base that's kind of a little bit weird. You feel like you're used to machine hours or labor hours. Hey, it's, your allocation base is based on labor cost, not labor hours, but labor cost. So now, well, what do you do now? Well, you would say, well, what's my labor cost now? What is my labor cost? Not what is my labor hours or overhead, but what is my labor cost? Well, what is my labor cost? Well, this is my labor cost, $16 per hour. You're paying your workers $16 per hour, and for how many hours, right? Well, these are the hours. We know that these are the hours. It doesn't matter that we're using them also in overhead. We know this. We can use the same thing in like labor hours. Of course, labor hours are labor hours, and they will be the same in terms of labor hours, but the rate of labor hours will not be the same. Here, the rate is what, 12 for overhead, but the rate for the labor actually workers is not 12, it's 16, right? 16. So what would be your total labor hours? Well, it would be $16 per hour times 24,000 hours. And then you would have some dollar amount large, and then it would say your allocation base is 70% or something, whatever, or based on direct labor hours, 60% or something like that. So then you would divide your total overhead into that allocation base, right? And that will give you your POHR. So sometimes kind of just allocation base is weird, but yeah, you have to be given allocation base. You cannot be guessing, well, should I use machine hours or labor hours or this or that? No. Okay. Anybody, I mean, this is kind of, maybe this works better, even though you did not ask like, like came prepared with questions, ask specific questions, but I think we are going through just kind of a review in a different way. So I'm not going through lectures, and you are asking good questions along the way. So maybe this is working better. So you need to, of course, you need to still look at the narrated lectures and exercises. Anybody has any questions? It's 2 o'clock, so we can move on soon. But anybody has questions about this chapter or this specific example? You will see that other examples are, pretty much the same. It's the same thing. Again, use the process, right? Use the steps, identify things and see, and spend some time with it. I know you are busy, but spend some time looking at, how this relates to this. Not because you will even remember it like forever or a long time, but these are very kind of technical things, especially like ABC. But something will stay, and then if you relate things to each other, you will remember it also better for the exam, at least for the moment, and that's the goal too. So Any questions? All about basics. Chapter 4, all about basics. Same, again, when you look at narrative lectures, you will see same idea as chapter 2, same procedure, same process. Just we have to repeat it a couple of times because we have multiple rates, and then we have to be careful, to add up all of those rates. Like here on the bottom, see, we are adding them up: 12,000, 180,000, 96,000, and you can see that these 288 and 201,600, that's the total overhead. That would be the same total as, again, if we add up these three. This here would be equal to this here. So you can see that these two products received different ratios or amounts of this total here. Again, this 288 just happens to be same number as this 288, but those are two different things. So they just receive different ratios. And how did they receive these ratios? Well, they receive these ratios based on the ratios of how much of these activities they used, And clearly, again, RIMS uses hours in full, which is why here is 180, and which is why here is 0, right? Because post used 0 machine hours, right? And when you're looking for another, again, smaller detail, if this is not, let's say here, or even if it's here, and you ask for RIMS, you don't make a mistake to, let's say, divide 1, well, in this case, it will be actually end up the same, but you don't make a mistake of dividing 21,600 by 100, just because you're looking for RIMS. Why? Because that's not the total. We need a ratio of these 100 to the total. That's how much we will apply to RIMS. And we can see it here, we will apply 12,000. Not because if you divide by 100 and you say, okay, then I divide by 100, then you would get some rate here, but then you multiply it back by 100, then you would get 21,600. So you didn't do anything, right? So you're looking for a ratio of this total of this activity, and then to apply that ratio to this total cost. So for example, here it ends up being 12,000 here and 9,600 here. Okay, questions? Are we good? Questions? 1, 2.
I'm sorry, Professor. I came really late and I lost a lot of the, the chapter review. So I'm just trying to look at.
It's recorded, so you'll have to go back. It's recorded.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I go back? I can't go back now. I have to wait till it finishes, right? Yeah.
I'm not that advanced yet, or not just me. We are not advanced that yet. Zoom. Okay, no questions. Very good. Okay, let's stop sharing this. Let's stop recording this.